Okay, so welcome to Build and Release Call. I'll start with the agenda items. So the first one is from Antoinette, and Antoinette is not here right now, so I'll just go through go over it quickly. So recently, in our private repositories, we were running out of build minutes, and so the GitHub workflow that we were using to build the private things, that workflow was changed to actually make the release and then point to a separate public repo where we'll actually make the releases. So hence, due to that, we don't need this extra ci.yaml, which actually builds and pushes the Docker image by running the GitHub action in the private repo. So we needed to change that thing so that this workflow has been removed, and this workflow has been replaced by another workflow which just performs basic lint checks that won't take a lot of build minutes, unlike something like building a Docker image and then pushing that Docker image. So this PR is good, other than the fact that this extra workflow has to be removed as well, because this also is like pushing the building and pushing the Docker image again, which you don't want. So if Antoinette was here, I would have suggested that thing to her, and I would note it down in the meeting minutes, and then point it back to Antoinette so that she can make these changes, and then we are good to go from this side. Okay, so I'll go over to the next topic. Hamza, the last we left off, we discussed about the end-to-end test that we have, which actually which actually deploy Meshery and then deploy the adapters and then deploy a design and then make some assertions about whether the pods or services or whatever are present or not. So those things. In Istio, in all the other different service meshes, the tests that we have, these tests only assert for, they only make like, so if I open the compatibility matrix for a little bit of context. So the results that you see over here are actually pushed from those tests. So these are the things like console client and console server. So what we essentially did was we tried to deploy a console service mesh through Meshery pattern or Meshery design, and we made assertions of whether these pods came up or not. So in most service meshes, we only make assertions about and this console client, and this console test was added by Hamza, who's going to present next. And like in most adapters, we have this control plane, but in Istio, we have extra stuff as well, like add-ons and all, and we also have applications. So the ask was to have to try to deploy applications not just in this, not just here, but across other adapters as well. So I guess Hamza took the task last time, so I just wanted to know what they. So Hamza, would you like to share your screen or talk about it, or?
Okay. Yeah, can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
So I based this off the Istio end-to-end steps for with the sample app, but I use the emoji photo. The only thing I changed pretty much is, yeah, the most important change. This, like, it points to the emoji photo pattern file in service mesh patterns repo. And the other thing is this namespace defaults, but when I go to this link, let me follow it. When I go to this link, it does not take me to, I think it's over here. Yeah. When I go to this link, these deployments are all in emoji photo namespace. So I do not know whether it should be the same namespace I put here or I leave it in default.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you the way imports work right now, so what you're just to give a little bit of context, Meshery also supports pattern files inside of pattern files, so that you can recursively have pattern files inside of pattern files. So on line number 4 and line number 11, using the use directive, you can import different pattern files. So to answer Hamza's question, so if you take that static pattern file and if basically the namespace was emoji auto, yes, but here inside of the settings, you have specified the namespace as default. So at the runtime, in the backend, it will be overridden. So instead of settings, if you have specified the namespace as default, then the namespace over there will be overridden if you have that particular field as variabilized. But if you go back to, can you go back to that pattern file which you just showed? Yeah. So in here, as you can see, this thing is not variabilized. Variabilized would mean that, can you open an example of like an Istio, something that we use in Istio, like which has those vars field? Because uh, if you can,
Um, is it here?
if you go back a little, yeah, uh, go back once more. Can you go back to the Linkerd app that you were showing? I'll just tell you what you need to make change. Maybe basically you can push this change upstream if you want to use this like that. So if you go back to the pattern file that you showed raw, that raw pattern file, yeah. So you can make a pull request in service mesh patterns repo where like you have name as auto generated and the vars field then you can add, which would be a sibling of services, and inside of that vars field you can specify namespace and the default value for that namespace, and then the text that you have highlighted, the emoji photo, that won't be hard coded. You will refer to the vars field, so it would be hash ref dot vars dot namespace. So if you just do that and you create a pull request, then you can use this pattern file to to use for the purpose you're using. Or I guess you can also just directly use it, deploy it in emoji voter namespace instead, and then make assertions inside of the emoji voter namespace instead of making it default. That would be pretty straightforward. So the second option looks straightforward to me. You can just deploy this deployment in the emoji voter namespace itself, and then you can make assertions instead of, yeah, instead of passing this as default, you can just pass that. You have that in uh, and wherever you are making the, if you go, can you go to the e2e test.yaml on the diff that you have over here on the files? Yeah. Yeah. So over here, can you show me where you're making the assertions? Yeah. If you go, if you scroll above a little, yeah, on line number.
This is for the installation. This is the service mesh installation.
Okay. 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 Okay.
Yeah, the one for, yeah, it's over here. 163, 164.
Yeah, so expected resource namespace where you have specified, okay, yeah, here you have specified emoji voter, right? So if you have specified emoji voter over here, it will make assertions in the emoji voter namespace. So you can just remove that settings, namespace, whatever. And I think this should work. So did this run, or do you have a run of this particular test that actually made
Uh,
ran successfully?
they don't run on I'm still trying to find out why. And yet here in the E2E test, yeah,
So what you're saying is,
yeah. It's supposed to be on push
okay,
branches or branches on push and pull request.
can you
Like
go
I
back to your,
deleted, yeah,
go ahead.
I first tried it, then I deleted the branch and made this new branch with no issue. Like it's not linked to any issue. It's just a pull request, but it's still not running.
Did it run in your personal fork?
When I point it to, I haven't tried it to point this yeah, to point this E2E test to the one in my repo, to the core workflow in my repo to see whether it runs.
Uh, okay. Can you show me the test that actually ran on this PR? If you go to the conversation. Mm, okay. So Are the older tests also not running, or where are the older tests that they should be running? So, or
No,
are
they
they
are
not?
not. Let me check other PRs.
Yeah, maybe
Mine.
is do you have dot GitHub in paths ignore if you go back to the conditions on which the workflow was running? If you have added dot GitHub, if you look at the original U2E test, or yeah, uh, yeah. So no, actually, it's just docs. So you have made change in dot GitHub, so yeah, it should have ran. Okay. Okay, I'll give this thing a review. Most probably, I think it must have ran on your fork. So if you can check that out. So far, this looks good to me. Although if I had a running instance, if I were to see a running test, then I would have been more confident in. Yeah, if you go into actions and see ac- what are all the actions that have been instead of actions. Yeah, just all the actions that have been. So if you go into E2E test, the first one, yeah, did it run the 1 hour ago? So this one that ran 1 hour ago. So did it contain the thing that you're looking for? Okay, I guess there. Okay, so I guess there are some extra bugs as well. That okay, as you can see, there are some syntax errors. So when this runs successfully, then we would be sure that there are no syntax errors. So if you could just fix those, and I'll get back to this PR. I'll review this.
Okay.
Let's get this merged
I will
before
fix
the
them.
weekend.
Yeah, I am. I am going to fix them before then.
Hmm.
It didn't show any any errors in my local IDE. Anyway, I will find out then fix them and push again.
Uh, Thank you, Hamza. So yeah, so thanks for your item. I guess Segun is next. By the way, Segun is I have two questions for you. First is that am I pronouncing your name correctly? And second one is this your first time on the call? If yes, then would you like to introduce yourself? If you have mic,
Sorry. Yeah, this is not my first time actually. I've been
yeah.
here a couple of times. So I think it's like my third meeting or fourth. I think it's the fourth. I attended the last build and release one meeting. Yes, that's it. Well, if I want, if you want me to introduce myself again, sure, can do that.
Yeah, please.
Okay, and it's actually Shegun, but then it doesn't really
Okay,
matter.
Shegun.
Yes. So I'm a DevOps engineer at Lafrage. Um, about 2 years experience. So after I'm from staying in Nigeria, Lagos. So I think that's all. That's all. And I'm actually just getting started with them with the open source. So I've actually reviewed some of the issues, and it's actually very interesting. But I really had the time to really expressively understand the whole Meshery because work has been a lot recently. So that's it. That's basically it. But then I'm working on a Golang linked issue. But I think the other assignee that I was assigned with, I think she already created a pull request on it already. So I'll do for another
Okay.
one. Yeah.
Would you like to share your screen?
Mm, Currently, I don't think I'm able to. I will, what do you call it? I'm attending with my phone. I'm not.
Yeah, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. If you have a PR open, you can tell me where to find it so I can open it for you.
No, no, I don't have a prayer open. The assignee with me, I'll sign with someone. She already created a PR for the Golan link
Okay, okay.
already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, that's why she has already. So I think I dropped a message on of creating a Golang link as a standalone GitHub Action workflow, because I looked around and I noticed she already it was at the, I think, the build and test YAML file
Mm-hmm.
action. Yeah, so I think it should have its own standalone for only the Golang. Yes, I think they are found. Yes, that's this is. No, I think is that the build UI and server YAML. So I think it should have its own standalone workflow file. But the other assigning already did that. She already created a pull request for it already. So that's what I'm trying to say.
Leave, by the way, you mute.
Oh man. Shagun, thanks for taking us through that. Nice to have you back. Antoinette is the other contributor, other individual that's done some work in this area recently. So yeah, I've got a question or two maybe for all of you on the call. And it's to answer the question, it kind of starts with, well, having a comprehension of what workflows are running. Because my question is, well, should we have a separate Golang lint, a separate workflow just for linting Golang? In order to answer that, like, it would be really helpful if we knew what workflows were running. So I know Antoinette and Ashish have given some thought about expanding this area of just like what we're running. But they could use help. And this is this spreadsheet. I know Ashish is going to make this a standing agenda item for each of the calls that we go through, so we can have some consistency, kind of track where we are, track how much progress we've made. This spreadsheet is just called the Meshery test plan. Hopefully, there's a link to it in here already. If not, we should probably put one way up top because it should be referenced pretty frequently. Here it is right here, just in the last time that we met, that this link right here. So the Meshery test plan, the first page, well, it can be renamed now because we are into we're working toward .7. I think we took a snapshot of the .6 release, that time frame. So here is the specific detailed test plan. Great. We should automate all these, or make sure, we should make sure that all of these are automated. This is a topic absolutely for this meeting and very squarely of focus for us. But a little bit of an aside as to what we're talking about now about Golang linting and where to run those in workflows. So today, so this sheet talks about what workflows are defined and how often they run and what they cover and what component they cover. And this one looks really relevant to our discussion. So there's inside of the Meshery repo, just the Meshery repo, there are 4 or 5 Meshery components, Meshery project components. They don't all live in that repo, but there's the docs, Meshery server, Meshery UI, Meshery provider UI. It's a super small one. It's the one that you see that you sign into. Meshery CTL, the CLI. There's some lots of Golang happening in the repo, lots of JavaScript happening in the repo. I might have missed a component. Actually, the Meshery Docker extension is in there, and there's a lot that's in that single repo. Wonderful. Sometimes it's appropriate to, if someone's doing a change on Meshery CTL, and it's really only appropriate to kind of test that section of the code. So this is a little bit of a backstory to the, as you all go to kind of think about this question that I was about to ask, which is it really ideal to separate out linting of Golang in a different workflow? I don't know that it is. Maybe. That's probably less important because it's at the moment, because it's kind of easy to move around, like make it a step in an existing workflow, which it is currently. The proposal here is to pull it out.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, please.
I think instead of creating a linked workflow, maybe you should add a pre-commit hook. Like it does the linting at the commit level. I think that would be better instead of creating a whole workflow just to link.
That's a good. Yes, there's somebody else might be able to more quickly speak to what webhook, or not webhooks, what commit hooks are currently present, because I know we use commit hooks in a number of places.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have those mainly in UI. We don't have those. Yeah, in the like in anything Golang related doesn't use any git commit hooks.
One, I think that would, I know it would save me pain, and it might save folks like Paul some pain. Paul just got done landing a PR on, well, I guess technically it was a Golang lint issue. It was a lint issue identified by Golang CI. But a lot of times what will cause me pain, and most of the rest of us, because if you ever get a red X on a failed check when you submit a PR, it's not fun. It's a little nerve-wracking because you think it's you that caused it. It's not always you, though. And so to Shagun's suggestion that there might be some pre-commit hooks, like one that would run Go format or Go FMT, I think that just like that little one would be an excellent start and very helpful to people getting surprised. You know, when you submit your PR, you know, you've hopefully, well, you'd be surprised. Not everybody tests the code that they write, or even builds it. So, but usually people do. They build and they test. They kind of poke at it, try to make it robust, and they submit it, you know, into the system for a bunch of the workflows to run against it. So it's a long way of saying, like, yeah, that +1 for me, that makes sense. You'd run some amount of checks up front so that you just save the round trip time.
Yeah, actually, that makes sense. So, Shagun, would you like to take this up as an item or something that you may present in the next call? Maybe if you want to add this pre-commit hook by yourself.
Yeah, sure, I can, but I think since I'm not the one writing the Golang, because it require fixing before you commit, you finish the commit, and before you move to the next level. So I think it's going to be, maybe I work someone that has the knowledge of Golang, because I'm like a little to none with Golang. So definitely I can write the commit hooks for LinkedIn for the commit, but then there might be errors there, so I can't commit them. I don't know if you get what I'm talking about. Then it means that if there's error in the LinkedIn of the Golang, then the commit I won't be able to push the pull request. Then I need someone to work someone that will be fixing. Like it will be like an agile process. Fix commit, fix commit, fix commit.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, Shagun, if you're inclined, yeah, I encourage you to give it a try. And yeah, to the extent that that in the process of trying to submit that initial commit hook, if you do bump into Golang specific issues, this is a good community to learn and grow with. So.
Okay.
Sure, I'll give it a try. Sure.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Shagun. The next update was related to the GoMod sync, but I think I can move it a little bit down. So I'll talk about the component modifier workflow first. So We have like we have a whole bunch of workflows, and one other workflow that is to be added over here. Like here we have added component generation one, and like I'm doing it right now. I should have done it previously, but since that PR is still pending and that the thing is not present on the upstream right now, I haven't. So just like we have a component generation workflow, and the job of that workflow is to run every 24 hours and come over here, and inside of the if you look at the inside of server, there is an output directory, and there are a whole bunch of these are basically artifact hub. Is we are basically scraping artifact hub and scraping all of their custom resources and generating the components for us, so that we can use these components in our designer and design configurator in Meshery, basically to let users configure these components. So like we have some Istio, OSM, Nginx things. So these things are scraped from Artifact Hub and every 24 hours being pre-generated over here. The only thing that was missing is that if you'll go inside of any of these JSON files, you'll find that a few things are missing actually, like which, for example, if I go into Nginx, so it doesn't specify which category it is. It's empty because the repo from where from Artifact Hub, from where we scrape it, they don't have any construct of categories or subcategories. Like, let me give you a little bit of context by opening another spreadsheet. So I guess it was called Meshery integrations. So yeah, in this spreadsheet, we are basically tracking all of those 500 or so components that we support. And here we are adding categories and subcategories. So for example, if you have something like Argo, the category would be app definition, and subcategory would be CI/CD, something like that. And these things are then updated over here on the spreadsheet. So the job of the component updater workflow is to kick off every 24 hours, and then you scrape the data from this particular spreadsheet, and then use this. So basically, use the Helm chart part as a key. So, for example, here the key is API SIX. So what it'll do is it'll go into the Meshery repository and find that particular directory from here, and then go into its particular component, particular version, particular component, and then it'll update all the things. Like it'll update the category, it'll update the subcategory, and not just those things. We have other stuff as well, like shape, primary color, secondary. So we are designing these components in our design configurator and our mesh map designer. So we want some extra context for these components, like what shape these are going to be. And of course, they don't specify this thing from their artifact hub source from where we actually take them. So we are using the community effort. We are actually maintaining this whole thing, and then using this thing to update that thing, to update the existing. So there is a component generator workflow, and then there is an updater workflow. These are decoupled. Generation goes to the artifact hub and it generates those things. Updater looks at the spreadsheet and then syncs those things. So I have a PR up for it, but there are some. So this is add metadata from CSV. So there are some changes required over here. Actually, the changes would be because recently we made some changes on the way on our core Meshery tables, how our tables look like, how the structure of that JSON that I just showed you. Actually, this also has changed. So this structure is pretty recent. So few things have been taken out. And so, for example, display name was used to be in metadata, but now it has been taken out. So because the structure of the JSON has changed, I haven't made those appropriate changes in the updater workflow as well. So here I'll just make those changes, and most probably this will be merged by tomorrow, I guess. So we will be having those components there. What it means from the user side is that as we go into having this, I think there is I'll just show that PR, what it means from the user side. There are a few things that have not been updated, but I think that video is still good enough to get few people interested. I guess it was in, okay, it was in, uh, I don't know if you're running out of time. Really, should I show that video from the mesh map video, the designer video?
Oh, yeah, sounds good. I of the agenda items that I have there, they can be
Okay.
postponed.
Okay. So Abhi actually, so the whole 500 or something components that I showed you, that JSON is going to be used to over here. There's a PR in mesh map where we're actually using that. So we actually uploaded a video demoing that thing. So if I yeah, so as you can see on the designer, right now they don't have logos and everything, but these logos and the colors for each of these component is what the updater workflow will make sure are there. So the things that you're seeing gray over here, these will be updated to something colorful, or shapes would be different and everything would be different. So all these new components would be added to mesh map. So for example, for Kubernetes, we already knew what the color and everything is. So that's why we have, but everything mostly everything like SVG and how these icons are going to look like, that would be sourced from the spreadsheet. And the workflow that I added actually make sure that that spreadsheet is in sync with the JSON files that we have over there. So that was update from my side about the component modifier workflow. So yeah, it will be. Does anyone have any questions regarding this thing or anything?
Oh,
Yep.
sorry, please, can we get this? Can we get the video? Can we get the video? Like,
Yeah, of course. I'll paste the link in the chat, and
okay.
you can get the video from there. Actually, because this is a private repository, I don't. Yeah, actually, this is a private. Yeah.
They might be able to, if you hit the raw URL, it might go
It's actually
through.
just it's a.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Yeah, if you want to upload it on a different issue or drop it into YouTube or something, then
Yeah. Okay.
in the meantime, I've got a question for Paul, actually. Paul, this is it's okay if you say I don't know, but just as a way of helping you familiarize a little bit more and kind of pushing you to work through your mental model of the understanding of some of the innards of Meshery. Ashish has talked about components on today's call a little bit, this component generation and how there's workflow that goes out and creates components, generates components. He talked about it a little bit yesterday as well on the Meshery dev call. And that video recording he was showing was like the visualization of some of those components. Are those starting to make sense, like where they're coming from and how they're used in Meshery?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So at the moment, much of it is not really, it's not clear. But also on my part, I haven't really like dived into it. So I wouldn't say yeah. Partly it's on my part. So I think I need to like look a bit more and maybe like ask a bit of questions around it.
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good area of the project to comprehend, or a good concept to kind of stew on and try to learn. To be fair, I don't think there's any amount of information in Meshery docs that really cover it very well. So actually, it could be kind of two birds with one stone, where as you're asking questions and digesting, that you might be turning around and adding some docs potentially. The short of it is like the shortest way to describe these components is that Meshery was, well, Jesus isn't the shortest. This is the medium way. Meshery was originally built to do, well, it's a management plane. So it's meant to manage cloud native infrastructure. It had a very strong initial focus on these newfangled virtualized networking layer with service meshes. And it still does that very strongly. As a framework, though, as a director level of framework, if you will, not necessarily a direct manager, but more of a higher level piece of framework that's more of a management plane than versus a control plane. Meshery's framework is very well suited for managing any amount of cloud native infrastructure, not just service meshes. Some of the ways in which it does that is quite generic to the extent that it was like with respect to Kubernetes, Meshery talks to Kubernetes, and whenever you connect it to any Kubernetes cluster, it will do a couple of things in terms of familiarizing itself with Kubernetes. One of those is deploy an operator in which this custom controller that we call mesh sync will spin up. It'll begin to pump Meshery server full of updates, just ongoing, using informers that'll listen and kind of watch as the Kubernetes environment is dynamic and changes, then it keeps Meshery server up to speed. The other thing that it does with respect to components is that Meshery, when it connects to a Kubernetes cluster, will take a look around and check out all of the resources, the resource definitions, whether those are custom resource definitions or core resource definitions. So Meshery basically digests Kubernetes API, it examines each of the Kubernetes objects like a pod or a deployment, or maybe it's a custom resource definition. So maybe it's a Prometheus operator with like alert manager definitions or something. And and that's this component generation that Ashish is talking about. So that it then generates representative Meshery components that represent each of the objects that it finds in Kubernetes. And one of the things that Ashish was saying as he was showing the video was that, well, there's a long list of these components, that you could possibly find inside of Kubernetes. Like, as a matter of fact, one way of considering that is that like there's a few different Helm hubs out there that Meshery will go out and can also go out and speak to and find custom resources, generate components from them, pull them back, and then Meshery can kind of in a first-class way support the long list of components, the resources that you see here. And as it does it, the collection of contributors here is working to ensure that that any number of resource-specific attributes are also captured. So appropriate colors and logos and also other relational rules, like so that people can do context-aware configuration. And so before I describe what I mean by that, like let's leave that as a cliffhanger for next time, maybe. But that's just kind of a whirlwind tour to say, well, Meshery now deals in infrastructure as code via components. Now lets you configure those components. It programmatically generates those components to help ensure high quality and also to get to that super long list of integrations. There's no way that, well, there's not no way, but it would take a lot of fingertips typing on keyboards to support all that. So they're programmatically generated integrations.
No, listen.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. All that you ever
So
wanted
I
to
also
know.
want to ask a question, if that's okay. So what do you think is a good place to start, like figuring out like the internals? Because so far, like I've gone through the docs, like looked at a couple of like persisting like call recordings and that, but I'm still having like a hard time like figuring out like how everything like ties together. So what do you think like would be like a good place to start?
Ashish, I wonder if you'll say the same thing that I might.
And I'll let you speak.
Okay. Like there's a bunch of resources, but like for me, needing pictures drawn for me to understand anything, like in crayon, ideally, is there's this Meshery architecture slide deck, and it's a great jumping off point for, like, it should explain a lot of stuff, but it might also lead you to ask other questions. And so this architecture deck is found inside of the community drive, along with like a long list of other design specs and some other slide decks. But that would be my go-to. That's where I would go.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. And this is another one of those things, like it's actually really helpful to the project, Paul, as you do this. And that is, there's a page in Meshery docs for each one of the components. So there's one that describes Meshery adapters and one that describes like Meshery, each of the architectural components. And hopefully what's written here would only reinforce the diagrams, and vice versa. Actually, Ashish, if you don't mind, if there's on the left-hand side under concepts, there's this under the brain. Between concepts, or just architect. Yeah, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 6 pages that talk to the different components. We might have some new components that have to be put up here, but yeah, this is, for me, like the architecture is what really helps me wrap my mind around the whole thing. Yeah. And then, like there's a lot of documentation for the product. Like then, okay, Lee mentioned this Meshery operator, and it had mesh sync. So like more than just what it does, like what are the interactions that it has? And there's some visualizations that describe that here. Okay, so then, but what about when I deploy it? Like what's the sequence? Those sequence diagrams, I think, they take a little while to digest, but I think that they're really helpful in terms of, what's going on. So.
Okay. Thank you, Shagun. I hope you find those things useful. And if you have any doubts, or if you run into any issues regarding your understanding around the project, you can always ping me or anyone in the Slack channel, in the public channel, so that or you can even open a discuss. You can go to discuss.layer5.io and open a question if you have a genuine question. Most probably, one of us is going to answer you within 24 hours or less. So the community is pretty they answer questions pretty frequently, so most probably your question will be answered. So thank you for your interest, actually. So moving on to the next item, which was actually, Paul is here on the call, I guess. Are you here, Paul? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so I guess you recently made a pull request around the lint checks, right? Was that must?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I keep speaking for Paul. I don't mean to.
Okay. So I guess if that was must, then I'll move on to the. But I don't want to move on to the next item before giving you another. So since you overheard most probably the topics around the lint checks and everything, so most probably you'd be interested in working around more of these lint. So for example, collaborating with other folks uh, like Shagun or maybe Antoinette around around maybe separating out these lint workflows. And if you don't already have a test plan, you can access the architecture slide from over here. If you see any discrepancy between the test plan that is over here in the workflows, you can rectify. Contributions are open. and yeah, I hope that you get another issue really soon, because we have these CI issues floating around pretty quickly. Okay, so I didn't. Yeah, do you have any questions, Paul?
No, I don't.
Okay. Uh, Thank you. And moving on to the next item. There are 2 minutes left, so I'll skip this one over because this might require a little bit of discussion, and I don't think we'll be able to cover it in 2 minutes. So, would you like to talk about the playground, maybe?
Yeah. I was just chatting with Adina about this a little bit. So for a long time, the community has had this desire to help people come to understand cloud native infrastructure and how to manage it, what Meshery does. And so there's a website out here. It's play.meshery.io. It says, hey, we're going to host a copy of Meshery and let people use it as a sandbox to do what I just said. And so there's a special build of Meshery that locks Meshery down such that not everybody can just come over and start to mine Bitcoins using Meshery and using, Kubernetes systems that it's connected to. Anyway, there's a special build of Meshery that's been worked on. There's a playground build. If you look inside the make file for Meshery now, there's a flag called playground. So if you set it to true, it does a special playground build, which kind of locks it down some. And so now we're ready to deploy the project specifically to Azure and probably onto AKS, so we can make sure that it's easy to manage. And Azure, or Microsoft rather, has given the project a healthy, quite a few credits this year because they want to support Meshery and the project. So we're in the process of just trying to take, actually, it's not Meshery and its adapters. It's really just Meshery server, which has Meshery UI in it as well. So we're really just looking to deploy like a single container, single deployment service accounts, cluster roles, cluster role bindings. We're basically looking to just follow the AKS instructions from Meshery's documentation to deploy Meshery, expose it publicly. We want to make sure we get the right host name pointing to it with the right ingress controller. And we just got done doing this, a deployment of the playground, and it was up for about a week. It was just running in a VM though, and it was using Nginx to help with SSL termination and secure WebSocket support. And that VM has been turned down so that we can move to AKS. And as we go to launch the playground, there's been a fair bit of interest about it. We really haven't told many people. Most people that have signed up have just kind of organically found the link to it from the Meshery project page. So if you're interested to help, and you promise not to mine Bitcoins, then we can probably get you credentials to the environment so that you can go do some DevOps or go help with the deployment. And so, that's the.
Thanks for the overview. And we hope to get the playground up and then move all of you the things, that component that I just showed. Most of you would be able to design those and give your feedback regarding user experience and UI and everything, and not just the video, you can play with it yourself. So thank you for that, Lee. And we are just over time, so thank you to you all for coming. And some of us have got an agenda item, so we'll be meeting the next Thursday. And the Slack notifications were actually were pointing to the wrong days, so they were pointing to the first and third Thursday, but we beat second and fourth Thursday, so we would be fixing that. And yeah, see you on the next call. Thank you everyone for joining. Bye bye.
Nice. Yeah. Ashish just said, sorry to just as a quick double check, I think most people have something to work on, but just in case, is anybody missing an item? I know Paul's going to be working on documentation for like the next couple of weeks, I know. But
Yeah,
no, but seriously, yeah. So Arya, I think I promised that, hey, I'll go point out like a Meshery CTL issue in case you want to consider picking one up. Meshery CTL is like is the nice landing spot for folks who are still relatively new to Golang and new to the project as well, because it's a smaller surface area and it's less object oriented. And so it's just easier to be successful with. So there's Lee's action item and implicitly Arya's action items. But yeah, and then I don't know if anybody else wants to sound off on things that they think they might do between now and next time we meet.
Hamza has. I think Adina is saying something, but actually, Adina is still inaudible. There might be some mic issues.
Yeah, well, sure. I'm going to lint. Maybe I checked workflows too, so I noticed that there was a linked workflow for JavaScript. So I'm thinking of adding both of them to the pre-commit hook. So then there won't be need for linked workflows at all. Again, then I noticed there were actually two links, Golang and JavaScript. So that was what I was planning on doing. Add a pre-commit for both JavaScript and Go. And also maybe links for the Kubernetes YAML files. So then you don't have to like get errors with the deployment.
Cool. Shagun, I'll create an issue just to help make it official for you, or just to help. And even if you only start with like one lint check or like one function inside of the pre-commit hook, it can be iterative. So
Yeah, sure. I'll definitely say I can do everything I want, but then I'll start with the Golang first.
Okay. So I think that's a good ending note. So thank you everyone for joining, and next week means 2 weeks, so 14 days from now. So see you all then. Bye everyone.
thanks, Ashish. Bye, guys.
Cheers.